And how's it going, everybody? It is Casey Turbin of Addressing Winchester, and I'm excited to share with you this three-part series I've been working on about the life and legacy of Patsy Cline and how it relates to Winchester, Virginia. So this first part, is going to talk about Patsy's birth, her early life up until she has her first hit in 1957 with Walking After Midnight. The second video in the series, will talk about the highs of her career, the peaks, and then the third, we'll talk about her plane crash, her death, and the legacy that has existed ever since. So I hope you guys enjoy the series, enjoy this first video, and the second and third videos will be up next week, first week of May. Hope you guys enjoy. I absolutely love Patsy Cline. Some would say it borderlines on an obsession. If you ask me, she is hands down one of the most iconic historical figures that has a real Winchester birthright. She wasn't a military character or a forefather that grew into a marble legacy within the area's proud and abundant history. Instead, she was born out of the mountains and embodied Winchester's greater frontier spirit more than the wrought iron gates and embellished buildings of the historic district. She was rock solid, a real trend-setting feminist icon whose own local reputation has been slandered by jealous women and tall tale-telling men who worried more about what happened in Patsy's bedroom rather than their own homes. As the generation that knew Patsy firsthand, or at least the Cline, as her more performative side was known as, passes on, her life and legacy is due for another look, much like all great icons. Now, I want to reiterate that Patsy was a feminist icon. She can mistakenly be reduced into the singing cowgirl, fringed outfit, ruby lip, stepping up to local area old-timey microphones until she's whisked away into a rich and famous modern life in Nashville. And that is so far from the truth. I would argue that Patsy's spirit didn't fully leave Winchester until her mother passed in 1998, some 35 years after Patsy. And that's part of Patsy's legacy that will be explored in this series. Her life was challenging and her fame was short-lived, full of tragedy and incredible success. She was only 30 years old when she died, and in her final years, she sang at Carnegie Hall, where she was given the key to New York City. She played a legitimate month-long Las Vegas residency in the age of Sinatra and the Rat Pack. She gained the admiration of Johnny Cash and played the Hollywood Bowl, belting her brand of backwood ballads into the LA hills, while Audrey Hepburn and Marilyn Monroe were challenging what it meant to be a woman in this country. Patsy Cline is 100% part of the social and historical upheaval that defined what it took to be a woman in America, and what also makes her rise so impressive is that in the middle of that, she kept raising a family at her core and her attachment to her town and her feminine duty. Now, as I've alluded to, there's a lot of rumor and misunderstanding about Patsy and her reputation in Winchester. Almost all of that disdain centers around her blatant sexuality and challenging of gender roles. The world was watching June Cleaver and Lucille Ball on TV, while Patsy was gaining attention because she was almost certainly dating a married man, while she too was in fact married. All several years before she had her first hit. She was a child, barely into her 20s, when she married her first husband, Gerald Cline, and started creating this local legacy as some sort of hillbilly harlot in the eyes of Winchester's upper-crust crowd, as well as with her more conservative middle-class peers who believed in being holy more than happy. There was no Shenandoah Conservatory polish on her music, and there was no father at home to round out the family that she was tasked with supporting. And she'd been doing that since she was a teenager. The insanity of this town devaluing Patsy due to her transgressions as a young woman will never fully cease to amaze me, and something I hope this generation of Winchester residents will work to contextualize and amend. Until there is a statue or a proper presence of this icon who loved Winchester just as much as Hanley, Stonewall Jackson, or George Washington, there is an absence in Winchester's historical interpretation. Now, Patsy was born September 8th, 1932, just weeks before Franklin Delano Roosevelt would be elected president, with hopes to restore worker and consumer confidence in the throes of the Great Depression. Just a week before Patsy was born, her mother, Hilda, had married a man almost 20 years older than her. Patsy's father, Sam Hensley, was like so many men of what historians call the lost generation, which refers to men and women who came of age during World War I. As a young man, Sam was known to be a bit of a playboy, fun and handsome. Known for his rich singing voice, he was likable and lovable. But once he was sent to fight in World War I, he came back a changed man. Prone to spats of anger and fast times, he was known to be violent when he drank. He was married before he met Patsy's mother, Hilda, where he had 2 children and worked as a blacksmith after the war. Once his first wife died, those children joined a foster family, and Sam became even more erratic and conflicted in his post-war trauma and disillusionment. This complex widower moved to Gore, Virginia for work in a quarry where the 40-year-old would meet a 13-year-old Hilda Hensley at a church picnic. When he met and courted Hilda, the love was said to be palpable and exciting, although the marriage was surely a shotgun arrangement, as Hilda was only a week from delivering their first daughter together when they did wed in 1932. The circumstances around the arrangement are convoluted and shady, but it would be criminal as a historian to not let it be known that there is some question and controversy around if Sam was really Patsy's father. In 2005, a woman named Charlotte Bartles published Our Daughter's Other Father, which claims to tell what some see as a somewhat poorly kept secret that her father, Chester Brannon, was Patsy's real dad. The book is full of stories and claims of Patsy calling Chester Pop Brannon her father, and how the two families mingled and kept the rumor alive and well even till today. I've read the book, and I certainly think it is possible that Patsy's mother was in a whirlwind love affair with a boy named Brannon, and by the 8th month of pregnancy, Sam Hensley, down and out, but capable enough, was knowing stepping into this role with another man's baby. I would encourage anyone interested to read the source material that I will tag in the episode notes and make their own conclusions based on the evidence. Regardless, Sam and Hilda were married and lived outside of Gore, Virginia, where Patsy was born at the old Winchester Hospital. Patsy's early years were tough and filled with constant moves all around the state. From Elkton, Lexington to Newport, the Hensley's family was always in steady search of work for Sam to meet the bare minimum to survive. Sam and Hilda had 2 more children, John and Sylvia May, and found some sort of security when Sam was employed at Washington Lee University up the valley. When Patsy was 13, she faced the first of what she considered her feats defying death when she caught rheumatic fever. At the worst of it, Patsy claimed her heart stopped when the fever grew out of control. She was put into an oxygen tent for days, and when she emerged, she claimed her voice was changed, booming, and new. Patsy had always loved Shirley Temple, even became a bit of a dancer in an amateur way, and she had taught herself how to use the piano and play the piano by ear. But by her teenage years, she was evolving quickly towards singing. As Patsy began growing into her performative side, the marriage between Sam and Hilda was fast falling apart. By 1947, Hilda and Sam had split, and like all things Patsy, there's a level of rumor and trauma in this period that is so critical to understanding the woman she became and the reputation she incurred. I think within the confines of good scholarship, it is fair to say off the source material that it is a fact that Patsy's father, Sam, molested her for years during this period. The sources for this particular rumor come almost exclusively from firsthand friends that Patsy confided in throughout her life. From songwriter Don Heck to fellow country music stars Loretta Lynn and Dottie West, there are dozens of stories of Patsy guarded, lacking detail, alluding to this incestuous relationship with her father. Loretta Lynn, in her most recent book, Patsy and Me, alluded to this period as saying by the time Patsy was a teen, she had lived an adult's life, alluding to what Sam had done to his daughter. Some lives are completely derailed by such trauma, but for Patsy, this was just the first of many. It appears that when Hilda left Sam, it was maybe less because of his deafness as a husband, but perhaps hastened by Hilda finding out about this dirty, dark secret. Hilda and Patsy, as much sisters as they were mother and daughter, saved themselves from Sam, and the 2 younger siblings in tow found some sort of safety and stability in Winchester by early 1948, giving Patsy the longest singular home of her life, Winchester's beloved 608 South Kent Street. Now, Patsy's move back to Winchester paired relief from her sexual abuser with the task of essentially taking over as provider. Patsy was able to get an 8th grade education, but dropped out to take on work. She had formerly worked slitting the throats of chickens as they went through the processing plant until she was found out as underage. After that, she took a job cleaning buses at a local bus terminal, and it was just a simple hard scrabble and humble life for the seamstress mother and the deputized provider that Patsy had become long before anybody on the best part of town was walking around calling her a common whore or worse. A proud but pitiful start, scrubbing the seats of the common traveler and eventually pulling sodas and tending fountain at Galt's Pharmacy. Just a hop, skip, and a jump from the aristocratic Hamley High School, where the bulk of Patsy's peers and detractors were rounding out the next leg of their education. The heartache, the yearning, the pain that quivered in Patsy's music and voice was forged in Winchester, where class was intrusive, visible, and all-consuming. She was full of vim and vigor, young, full-lipped, shapely, and an absolute pistol of a woman. The reality is that Patsy was never going to be the wife of an insurance salesman, boring UVA alum, some doctor with generations of Winchester pedigree, regardless of how much she enticed them. She was all fire and talent, and that's exactly what Jim McCoy saw as a young, teenage Patsy, back then just Virginia Hensley, pressed into the studio window at Wink FM. Back then on the weekends, there was a weekly roundup of country fun and in-studio performances by brave local groups looking to become the next Carter Family, Ernest Tubb, or in Patsy's case, Kitty Wells. She was known to frequent the studio to listen to the acts and build up on the courage to try out for the local program's open spots for area talent. The morning Patsy showed up at the Wink Studios, she introduced herself by her name, Virginia Hensley, and the local music mind was impressed with the confidence of the young girl singer. And it's important to remember that at this time in country music and most live band shows, the woman was not the star of the show. The girl singer was a feature, like an instrument, good for a couple pointed solos, but not a headliner, not a main attraction. As Joltin' Jim sank back into his chair and heard the young up-and-comer, he was quoted as saying he knew that one day she would be a star. And here's a picture performing of Patsy and Joltin' Jim performing together. But in that moment, in that studio, I am not sure anyone knew what it would mean for Patsy to become a star. Would she be some sort of Appalachian Billie Holiday, crooning pop songs, or would she evolve into that force that dismayed country and pop boundaries, inspired generations of female vocalists, and became the first solo female artist to be inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame? In that moment, Patsy wanted to be heard, and heard she was. The Wink performance led to new opportunities, none of which were an escalator to fame and fortune. Shortly after her Wink debut, she was offered a chance to audition for the Grand Ole Opry, which remains the crown jewel in any country performer's career. In 1948, just 16 years old, based off of a letter she received from Opry booking agents, Patsy and her mom took off overnight to Nashville with the siblings. Too poor to even get a place to stay, they slept in a park when they got there, but Patsy's dreams were crushed when she got up and found out that when she was 16, she was too young to perform. And even though males that were 18-year-olds had been performing at the Opry for years, she was sent home packing. For Patsy, her path to the Opry and success would come from blazing a path across the region's honky-tonk and bar scene. From Martinsburg to Brunswick, Maryland, Patsy joined up with a jumping band called the Melody Playboys, led by a talented and business-minded musician named Bill Peer. Peer and the Playboys were established regionally, and Peer took an instant liking to the young Virginia Hensley. As a married man, perhaps too much of an interest, and at this juncture, for the girl from the wrong side of the tracks, this is what sets the rumor mill on fire. There's a 5-year window before she turns 25 where she gets caught up in an affair with Bill Peer, marries an older man named Gerald Cline, and then meets the boy her own age that she would truly fall in love with. These themes are nothing new, but taboo in the 1950s. While Patsy wore slacks and called everybody she met hoss, especially the men, her powerful talent, sexuality, and personality were her ticket, and she was not going to let the rumor mongers of Winchester stop her, as if they didn't have infidelity in their lives. She was ready to touch off and conquer the world, and that's exactly what she did, although the climb to her first hit would take several more years. Patsy was training on the job, honky-tonking as a means of refinement and learning to hold the stage. Some look back at this phase as a clumsy climb, but in reality, she was self-taught and learning how to take over a stage way before she ever got to Nashville. Now, I want to end the first video by digging a little bit deeper into the men that were made mostly famous by Patsy when things were said and done. Just like her song Tra-La-La Triangle, the period between joining up and meeting Bill Peer and the Melody Playboys in 1952 through marrying her second husband Charlie Dick in September of 1957, just 6 months after the release of her first hit Walking After Midnight, was an amorphous love triangle that very well may have had more points than just 3. It is here, as I said before, where Patsy's proximity to Winchester made her rise in affairs the talk of the town. As she climbed and grew into an artist and a mature woman, her escapades were easy fodder for social clubs and living room chats hosted by men and women alike. The genesis for this begins with Bill Peer, the handsome and older band leader for Patsy's most consistent gigs before she broke out. Bill was married but quickly became infatuated with Patsy. Their relationship grew and everyone knew it. From the story of the Midwest Hotel calling the Peer home to inform Mrs. Peer that she had left her coat in her husband's hotel room, even though she was a time zone away, to the fact that one biographer claims that Peer spent $30,000 of his own money to promote, costume, and woo his stage mate. The affair was known by just about everyone. For her career, Peer is the man who is credited with morphing Virginia's middle name of Patterson into her stage name of Patsy. He also was the one that was able to get Patsy's demo to 4-Star Records and able to help her ink her first contract, even though it was exploitative, something that we will talk about in the second video. But by getting Patsy onto 4-Star, Peer effectively became Patsy's first manager. Now, things with Peer had become out of control for Patsy, and some of her biographers suggest that her chance encounter with a much older, portly man named Gerald Cline at the Brunswick Moose Lodge outside of Frederick, Maryland, gave her a chance to become the respectable woman she thought she could be. Gerald Cline was the heir to a construction company, but was not a wealthy man when he met Patsy, rich compared to the circumstances that Patsy knew. Cline was twice divorced and was described as boring and phlegmy when he was able to get Patsy's attention. The two dated and shocked everyone when they got married on March 7th, 1953. The marriage only lasted 3.5 years, but Gerald wanted a homemaker, not a country music star, for a wife. He was turned off to the late nights and the very obvious affairs she was having with Bill Peer. He wanted kids with Patsy and a home, which begs to why he even sought out Patsy in the first place. But the two lived in a small home in Frederick and had a cordial but mostly unloving life. They both had affairs and seemed to never be on the same page. In his final act of defiance, he was the one that filed for divorce just after she finally broke through the national stage in 1957 with her appearance on Arthur Godfrey's Talent Scouts. The man that really stole Patsy's young heart was also discovered in this period where Patsy was stuck in what biographers call the Brunswick Triangle with Peer and Cline. On April 13th, 1956, at the Armory in Berryville, Virginia, Patsy meets Charlie Dick, who aggressively pursues her. He makes a few stabs, but finally gets a dance and a chat with the married regional star that is known to wear a dress on stage that is so sexy the guys in the band only refer to it as the outfit. Soon enough, the two are in love and start yet another reason for folks in Winchester to wonder. Up to this point, Patsy had more husbands than TV appearances, and the rumors forged and metastasized before she was large enough to outlive them locally. Now, when she becomes a star, she was never all that famous in her own town, more infamous than anything. But Charlie becomes the catalyst for the next phase of Patsy's career, although she kept Cline tagged on as her now famous surname. Patsy once wrote a letter to a friend where she excitedly tells her gal pals that she's finally met a boy my own age, and he's a hurricane in pants, which I think is a supreme compliment for old Charlie. Now that's going to wrap up video 1. In part 2, Charlie will get called into the Army, Patsy will begin her real climb to success, and there will be lots of new details and stories that come from this critical period in Patsy's life. Now, thanks again, everybody. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Please like, subscribe, and follow Addressing Winchester. Once again, 2 more parts about Patsy's life and legacy coming out next week. Thank you.